All right. So, good afternoon and welcome to our first Tulsa area FAFSA event. My name is Laura Latta and I'm the Director of Post-Secondary Partnerships and Research at Impact Tulsa. I'm so beyond thrilled to be joined by my friends from Tulsa area school districts and higher education institutions from across the state, including Tulsa Community College, University of Oklahoma, Langston University, Northeastern State University, OSU, University of Tulsa, and Rogers State University. Impact Tulsa is a Tulsa-based collaborative action group that's part of the National Strive Together Network. We support 20 school districts and 7 post-secondary institutions, that is colleges and universities in the Tulsa area. Impact Tulsa's focus is on helping every child from cradle to career succeed in school and in life, from kindergarten readiness all the way to graduation and post-secondary completion and employment. Impact Tulsa uses Strive Together's principles of engaging the community, advancing equity, developing a culture of continuous learning and improvement, and leveraging existing resources within the community to promote the high quality educational experience of every child. A few logistics before we get started. The meeting sessions will be recorded so that you can watch them later, with the exception of the Q&A session. We will not be recording that session in order to avoid capturing any private information. We certainly do not want to do that. We will share information in our chat box. Feel free to communicate by typing in the chat box if you have a question or if you need assistance. Remember to mute yourself during presentations and unmute yourself when you would like to share out. So to do that, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom toolbar, the microphone icon. Give that a click to mute or unmute. If you'd like to raise your hand if you have a question, you'll click on your participants and the raise hand button that pops up whenever you hit the participant icon. And then finally, the chat feature, you'll hit the little chat bubble and you can either message everyone or one person specifically. So, oopsie. The goal of our time together today is to give you, senior level students and families, as much information as you need to successfully complete your FAFSAs. We also want to create a space for you to connect with a financial aid advisor who can help guide you through the process. We know that completing your FAFSA can be overwhelming, and we're here to help. Please note that the current FAFSA application is for 2020 seniors. Seniors are the class of 2021 who were just juniors. We'll get lots of information from this session, and we're so glad that you're here, but please keep in mind that you'll need to wait to apply for your FAFSA when the application is released on October 1st. All right, so we're gonna practice those chat box skills. Here's how the meeting's gonna go. Everyone will get to hear about the FAFSA from the incredible Douglas Allen, financial aid guru and assistant director of financial aid at OU Tulsa. After Doug's presentation, so he'll do the main session presentation, there will be 5 different options of breakout sessions that you can attend. If you have questions, very specific ones that need to be answered about the FAFSA, you want to go to breakout session 1, which is the Q&A session with John and Lizette from TCC. If you want to see the FAFSA completed step by step, you'll go to breakout session 2, where it's going to be a FAFSA form step by step with Aaron and Gloria from TCC. If you are or have a parent from outside of the US and would like to learn about how to complete the FAFSA, you'll want to go to breakout room 3 with Mimi Martinez from Tulsa Tech and Calvin from TCC. To learn about independent or dependent status, who's considered a parent on the FAFSA, you'll go to room 4 with Alana Mbanza from the New Tech Network. And then finally, if you would like to learn about some common misconceptions and myths about the FAFSA, you'll want to go to room 5 with Ryan Noche from Tulsa Public Schools. So before we go any further, I need to know where everybody wants to go so that I can place you for when it's time to go to a breakout session. So in the chat box, pull up your chat box and type which session that you would like to go to. So I'm gonna go ahead and model. I am gonna choose breakout session 4. So I would put breakout session 4. Great, or just the number is fine too. Awesome. We're gonna wait for everyone to have an opportunity to put their breakout session in the chat box. Thank you, everybody. Awesome. So everybody should have put their breakout session choice. If you didn't, I will private message you to get your breakout session choice. Before I hand it off to Doug, I just have one more thing to add. I'm going to be putting a link to a Google folder with lots of FAFSA information in the chat box now. After this link is over, if you follow this, or sorry, after this session is over, you can follow this link and you can learn more with different FAFSA resources from the institutions that are presenting. Okay, so any questions before we get started? Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass it off to Doug Allen from OU Tulsa.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Let me try to share my screen here. Well, welcome everyone. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm glad that everyone is here. We're very excited to have everyone here today. And I don't know if you can see my screen. Give me a moment here. Okay, can you see it now? Good? Okay, great. So again, welcome everyone. As Laura mentioned, my name is Doug Allen. I am the Assistant Director at the University of Oklahoma, the Tulsa campus. And today's topic of discussion in the main session is navigating financial aid and some FAFSA tips. So I'd like to go over just basic information here. It's not going to be detailed. We have the breakout sessions for the detailed information there, but this is basic information here. Okay, so financial aid from A to Z. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. One thing I like to do is I like to start off with the important dates, and one of the important dates I like to start off with is October 1st. Laura mentioned it earlier. October 1st is when the FAFSAs are available each year. Okay, so October 1st for the upcoming school year, 2021, I want to say, upcoming school year. Actually, the FAFSAs are available now. So you can go into your FAFSA form and complete the FAFSA for the upcoming 20 and 21 school year. So October 1st, once that comes around, then the next year FAFSA will be available for 21, 22. Okay, so keep in mind that October 1st is when the FAFSAs are available. We encourage students to apply as soon as possible. Once that FAFSA is available, we have a preferred due date of December 15th, which is our recommended due date. I even encourage students to complete their FAFSA by December 1st. The reason being is because there are a lot of scholarship opportunities, or a lot of grant opportunities that require FAFSA on file at a certain time. And so in order to beat the deadline, we encourage students to complete a FAFSA by December 15th or even by December 1st. Of course, May 1st is the National College Decision Day. I know that date has been pushed back due to the pandemic. So if you want more information about that, you can always touch base with the college, or you can touch base with your recruiter in regards to the National College Decision Day. And December 30th is the final day to submit the FAFSA form. And that's basically the date at the end of the academic year. So say for instance, for our current year, for the 19 and 20 school year, we have students that are applying for financial aid for the summer semester, for instance, well, June 30th is the final day to submit their FAFSA, okay? So keep in mind that June 30th is the final day at the end of the academic year. But we like to say, you know, hey, let's be proactive here. We want our students to be proactive. And so we say June 30th, keep that in mind for the upcoming year. So if you want to have your FAFSA submitted by June 30th, if you haven't already completed your FAFSA, make sure to have it done by June 30th. That's just a recommended due date for the upcoming year. But basically that June 30th date is at the end of the academic year, technically speaking, but we want students to submit their FAFSA as soon as they can. So those are the important dates there. So here are some terms that you should know in regards to FAFSA, in regards to financial aid process. Number one is the cost of attendance, the cost of attendance, and that's basically your student budget. And that's your direct costs as well as your indirect costs, like your tuition, your fees. We consider that direct cost. If you're living on campus, we consider room and board as a direct cost. Also, books and supplies is another form of direct cost. And then you have your indirect costs, like your transportation. Well, if you have a car, you're going to need gas with that car, okay? So we consider transportation as an indirect cost. And then there's the personal miscellaneous expenses. Whatever you need to use your aid for, we consider that personal miscellaneous, we consider that indirect cost. So we call that the cost of attendance altogether. That's just your student budget, how much it could possibly cost you to attend the university. That's an estimate. So it's not going to be an exact amount per se, because we don't know exactly how much it'll cost for students' transportation per se. But we basically survey the area. We survey different numbers. We have different numbers that we survey, different areas that we survey. We come up with the cost of attendance and give a student a general idea as to how much it could possibly cost a student to attend the university. So we consider that the cost of attendance. The next term that you should know is the expected family contribution. The expected family contribution, yes, that's the EFC number. That's the number that you would receive after you complete your FAFSA form. So once you complete your FAFSA, you receive a student aid report via email. And on that student aid report, you will see the expected family contribution, or your EFC number. Basically what that number is a number calculated by the U.S. Department of Education. We do not calculate that number in financial aid. It's a number that is calculated by the U.S. Department of Education. So they consider things like household size, they consider things like income, they consider a lot of different factors in calculating the expected family contribution. They also consider income from parent or income from student. So that's what's considered the EFC number, basically how much you could possibly contribute to your education. That's not the cost of the university, that's not the amount that's in your bank account, but it is kind of a figure to say this is how much the student or the parent could possibly contribute to their education. So that's what they mean. So that's what they mean by expected family contribution. Then there's financial need, the term called financial need. So that's your cost of attendance, which is your student budget, minus the expected family contribution, which is that EFC that's determined by the federal government. And then we determine your financial need. And so what we do is we look to see what the student is eligible for, if the student is eligible for scholarships, if the student is eligible for any loans or whatever aid that the student is eligible for, we apply it to the financial need. And if the student has additional need on top of what all has been applied, then what we'll do is we'll find additional help for the students. The students can always contact our financial aid office if they're needing additional help. And a lot of colleges have that additional help for students. And so students, if you're needing help, parents, if you're needing help, you can always contact the financial aid office and see what else you can receive in terms of financial assistance. The other term that you should know is FAFSA. So what is a FAFSA? It stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Notice the word free. Notice the word free. And the reason why I say that is because there are some other organizations out there, other websites that would charge students to complete a free application. So you don't want to go to those websites. Make sure to go to the official website. That's fafsa.ed.gov or studentaid.gov. It's the same site. Just notice the .gov whenever you go, and there's a breakout session at the end of this main session that will go over details on how to complete that FAFSA. But again, it opens October 1st for the next year. Now for 2021 school year, that FAFSA is already available now. So you can complete it today, complete it tomorrow. That FAFSA is available. And the FAFSA is always a good idea just to have on file, even though you're not interested in federal aid. It's good just to have a FAFSA on file anyway, because there are some organizations that will require financial need like a financial needs analysis. For instance, some tribes, if you are affiliated with a tribe, the tribes will use your financial need from your FAFSA in order to determine how much of the aid they can provide for students. And so it's always a good idea just to have that FAFSA on file, just in case if you're needing aid later on in the future, okay? So here's some helpful hints here. Free application federal student aid, again, completed each year, and both parent and student will need the FSA ID. What is an FSA ID? Well, the FSA ID is essentially your legal signature. This is your signature that you would use to sign off on your FAFSA. So parents, you can use the FSA ID to sign off on your FAFSA form. Students, you can use the FSA ID to sign in to your FAFSA. So both parent and student will need a FSA ID. Again, that's your legal signature. You're gonna need that in order to complete the FAFSA form. And again, priority due date is December 15th. And if there's a situation where the student is the citizen and then there's an undocumented parent, then you can use all zeros in place of the Social Security. So we can go into detail with some of the breakout sessions on how to complete the FAFSA, as Laura mentioned earlier. But it's a good idea. That's just a quick tip there. You can use all zeros in place of the SSN in terms of undocumented parent situation there. We'll go into the next one here, types of aid. Types of aid, it's free money, earned money, and borrowed money. I like to kind of categorize it as free money, earned money, and borrowed money. Let's talk about the free money first. So the free money would be scholarships. You don't have to pay the scholarships back, okay? Scholarships is what we consider free money. And you can search through university websites, you can search colleges, different college organizations, and see if they have a scholarship opportunity. You can search outside of the university as well, civic organization, churches, websites. Also, you can search credit unions. My credit union was offering a scholarship for students. And so scholarship opportunities are all around. So it's always a good idea just to research your opportunities and see what's available. But one thing that I encourage students to do is to look for the fee. If there's any organization or any type of website that's asking for some sort of nominal fee to search for scholarships, I would suggest going the opposite direction. You don't want to pay for scholarship searching, okay? You're asking for money. You're not giving away the funds, right? So scholarship searching is free. And also keep in mind that scholarships are free money. It's free money. So you do not have to repay the scholarships, okay? So that's an example there. We encourage students to just search their different resources and see what scholarships are available. Another example of free money, grants. Grants is another example of free money. And you can receive you can receive a grant based on your FAFSA form. And so that's why, again, it's so important to submit a FAFSA form. The grants do not have to be repaid. The most popular grant will be a federal Pell Grant and also the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. Those are great opportunities there. So the way to apply for those grants is through the FAFSA form. Again, it's through the FAFSA form. So you apply for the Pell Grant through the FAFSA. You apply for the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant through the FAFSA. And the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, we like to call it SEOG. So that's the way to apply for SEOG is through the FAFSA. You can also apply for state grants like Oklahoma Tuition Aid Grant. So here in the state of Oklahoma, we have the OTAG. We call it OTAG, but Oklahoma Tuition Aid Grant. You would apply through your FAFSA. So once you apply through FAFSA, you can see what opportunities are offered to you. Another example of a state grant would be the Oklahoma Promise. Some of you may already be familiar with Oklahoma Promise, some of you not so much. But Oklahoma Promise basically pays for tuition for 5 consecutive years in the pursuit of a bachelor's degree. It's based off of your FAFSA form. So Oklahoma Promise is a wonderful opportunity. Most students who are familiar with this program are already on this and they've already applied. Usually students will apply through the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade year for the Oklahoma Promise. And if you're enrolled in Oklahoma Promise and you attend a Oklahoma Promise school, like a school in Oklahoma, the parent income cannot exceed $100,000, and that's the combined income. So Oklahoma Promise would check for the income each year through the FAFSA form. So again, that's why it's so important for students to submit that FAFSA timely because Oklahoma Promise would like to process their files and see if the parent combined income will exceed $100,000. If not, then the student, of course, remains on Oklahoma Promise and goes through their program. Now, also students should check to see if the Oklahoma school has a partner scholarship program. That's right. A partner scholarship program, basically there are matching programs. We like to call it matching programs within our financial aid circles. We call them matching programs. So basically Oklahoma Promise student goes to a school in Oklahoma with Oklahoma Promise. And on top of that, there is a scholarship added. So it's a matching program there. So if you come to University of Oklahoma, for instance, with Oklahoma Promise, we have a program called the Crimson Commitment that will attach additional scholarship funding to the Oklahoma Promise. And students can use that scholarship, the additional scholarship, for things like books. Students can use it for supplies. Students can use it for whatever they need to use it for, tuition, housing, things of that nature. So we have that at the University of Oklahoma, for instance, but we're not the only university that has that option. There are a lot of other universities within this great state of Oklahoma that have a partnership program or a partner scholarship or a matching program for students that are on Oklahoma Promise. So we encourage students to touch base with their financial aid office to see what the options are like for Oklahoma Promise students. The other example is Earn Money. Earn Money, work study, student jobs, as well as just a regular student job. Work study jobs are basically you're working on campus for federal dollars. That's basically how that works out. You find a job on campus somewhere, maybe working at a cafeteria somewhere, or maybe working with like the student union, or maybe working at a library somewhere. So students are able to work on campus for federal dollars, and you can use those funds for whatever you need to use it for, your housing, your tuition, and you just use your funding. To sign up for work study, you will go on the FAFSA form, and there's a little question that will ask if you're interested in work study. You can just indicate, I'm interested in work study. That puts you in the running for work study positions. And the next step would be to contact your financial aid office. And once you contact your financial aid office, more than likely they'll tell you just to go search for work study positions on campus. And there may be a website where you can go search for work study positions. There may be a posting on campus somewhere for work study positions. More than likely it's going to be online, because a lot of things are online now, especially around this time and age. Everything's online, but students are able to search for work study positions online. And then there's a regular student job, just working at a grocery store somewhere off campus, or maybe on campus. There may be a Starbucks somewhere. That's just an example of Earn Money, and it's not based on need. The work study is going to be based off of need, and I think students can receive up to about $4,500 in work study funding. So it's a wonderful opportunity if the student wants to work. Then there's borrowed money. Borrowed money, of course, are loans. That's one of our most popular sources of financial aid are other loans, okay? So there are different types of loans. There are the federal loans, there are the private loans, the institutional loans. Now, the federal loans are going to be the most popular one, and we actually recommend students looking into the federal loan first before looking into a private loan. So if you're going to get a loan, we recommend going the route of a federal loan first to see what your options are like for a federal loan. And the way to apply for that is through the FAFSA. Okay, you apply for federal loans through FAFSA. Private loans are usually a loan of last resort. So we suggest looking at maybe an institutional loan before looking into a private loan. Look at a federal loan first, then maybe an institutional second, and then maybe look into a private loan if you have no other option there. And the reason why we say that is due to the fact that the private loans are not regulated by the U.S. Department of Education. So sometimes the interest rate can be a lot higher than the federal loan. So that's why we suggest going the federal option first. So two types of federal loans. So when you complete a FAFSA form, you're applying also for a subsidized loan or direct unsubsidized loan. The subsidized loan is for undergraduate students. So for students that are going after their bachelor's degree, the interest accrues on this loan, but here's the deal. The federal government is responsible for paying that interest while you're in school. So it's a good idea, if you're going to go for a federal loan, to look into a subsidized loan first. We recommend that. And then the unsubsidized loan is just a little bit different. The interest accrues on that, but the student is responsible for the interest on this loan. So that's the basic difference. One interest is covered by the federal government. The other interest is actually covered by the student. Now, ultimately speaking, the student can defer their loans until after they graduate. So then do not necessarily have to make payment on their loans while they're in school. You can, if you like, you can save on interest if you decide to do that, and there's no prepayment penalty. But normally students would like to just defer their loans until after they graduate. And even then, there's a six-month grace period before they start making repayment on their loans. And they would just touch base with their lender at that point. Okay, here's an example of another federal loan. So parents, you can actually apply for a loan for your student. So we call this the Parent Plus loan. This is for undergraduate students. Now for graduate students, there's a Graduate Plus loan. So we're going to just talk about the undergrad portion here. So parents, again, if you think your student needs additional help, so say for instance, the student receives scholarship funding, the student receives a loan funding, and then the student receives a grant funding, but they still have a need. What parents can do is parents can apply for a Direct Plus loan, a Parent Plus loan for their student. There's a little bit of a difference here. The Direct Plus loan is going to be credit based. So it's a little bit different from the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan in that this one is a credit based loan and the borrower is responsible for all the interest. You can defer these loans until after the student graduates. Parents may borrow up to the full cost of the education. So what do I expect here? So what do I expect? We expect for students to complete a FAFSA. Make sure to complete a FAFSA and sign with the FSA ID. FAFSA is processed, and then the student receives an email with a report, which is that student aid report. And then the college just receives the information, and then we start processing it. And then once we process it, then we'll see if there's anything else that's needed. We have a process called verification. So for instance, if a student is selected for verification, parents, students, do not fret. Doesn't mean that there's something terribly wrong. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get financial aid if you are chosen for a process called verification. All verification is just us taking a second look at the file just to make sure all the information is correct. That's all that means, okay? And so we may ask for a 1040 form or your tax transcripts, or we may ask for a W-2. Whatever we ask for, just go ahead and submit the documentation to the financial aid office. And then number 6, we assemble the awards package and we send the information to the student. So that's basically it in a nutshell. I know I kind of went over a little bit there, but I wanted to give you kind of a nutshell there as to what to expect in terms of financial aid and FAFSA. So at this point in time, I'd like to yield the floor back to Laura, and I'll stick around at the end of our entire session for Q&A as well. Laura?
Thank you so much, Doug. I am going to take back the screen. There are still a couple of folks who haven't picked a breakout session. So I want to show that to everybody so that you know what your options are. Okay. Should be on the screen now. Okay. Oops. Breakout session 1 is the Q&A. Session 2 is the FAFSA step-by-step. That will also have a Q&A element to it. Session 3 is parents and students from outside the United States. Session 4 is independent or dependent, who's considered a parent on the FAFSA. And breakout session 5 are FAFSA myths. There will be at least one person from Impact Tulsa in every room helping with tech needs and also recording the session with the exception of the Q&A session. So before we go, are there any questions? All right. I am going to open up the rooms, and what will happen is you will stop seeing everybody and you'll just see the small group. If your session ends early, your presenter will tell you to either come back to the whole group where you can get one-on-one support, or they will conclude the session if you've gotten everything that you need, because of course the goal is to answer all of your questions. So we'll see you in a second. Hey, Anna and Tara and Calvin and Ma. Want to make sure that you get to the right room. If you have a notification on your screen asking if you'd like to join the room, please join. Ma, which room would you like to join? Keisha, can you remind me which room you requested? Hey, Keisha. Emily, do you want to go to a breakout session?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and send me to one, that'd be great.
Is there one that you would like to go to?
I'll do number one. I don't think anybody went to number two, did they?
Yeah, we have a couple people in two. Well, one person in two.
Okay, that's the one I think I'm signed up for next month. So you can send me to two. I'd like to kind of get a feel for what that is. So I'm ready next month.
Okay. Let's see. How do I add you to that room? And Keisha, if you want to let me know which room you'd like to go to, then I can put you there. All right, Emily, I just sent you a notification. Keisha, I'm going to go ahead and send you to breakout room 1. And then there's somebody on the phone. Can you let me know which room you'd like to go to?